And welcome, everybody. My name is Elissa Tobin. I'm the Technology Integration Specialist at Olive Harvey College. So my role is to support faculty and with the use of Brightspace and technology. This training today that we're covering is the course copy cleanup and management for the new term in Brightspace. The purpose of this training is to walk through the steps of how to copy your course and some of the tips and tricks that you can go through to easily clean up your course once you do copy from one semester to another. I'm going to start with going through a PowerPoint presentation. I only have about 5 or 6 slides, and then we're going to go right into the live environment because I think it makes more sense to kind of walk through something live than it does to see screenshots on the screen. Before we get started, if you do have specific questions about the process, I will pause in between different sections after I finish a portion of it to see if there are questions, but feel free to throw questions into the chat and I'll be keeping an eye on that as well. And hopefully in the midst of the training, I can answer those questions. I'm happy to keep this pretty casual. I ask that you mute yourself if you're not talking so there's no background noise. But I'm happy to answer questions in the midst of something that I'm doing. This training is meant for all types of users. So you don't have to be an advanced user to get something out of this training. You certainly can be an advanced user to still get something out of this training. So hopefully it'll be useful for everyone. Again, I'm just going to reiterate for those of you who might need to track attendance for adult education, I'm not sure how they're doing that, but just I would recommend making sure that your name appears the way that I can easily, or they can easily identify you if I pulled a roster of who attended like a participant list. And if you don't see your name listed as something that would make sense, click on the participant window. You can hover over your name and rename yourself. Feel free to log into Brightspace to follow along. I know when I share my screen, it takes over your entire monitor. You can hit the escape key and it lets you minimize that window a little bit so you could do other things. But you can also just watch along. I'm not going to stop assuming that you're following along because we wouldn't have enough time to make this a hands-on training in the environment that we have. But I certainly don't mind you kind of attempting to do that on the side. Real quick, I'm just going to highlight some of our resources. Where you registered today, you likely already made it to our knowledge base and our resource page, but Brightspace resources.ccc.edu is the knowledge base for all of our Brightspace resources and the training schedule and recordings of past training. So you can find all of that at that website. I also have 2 additional links here, and I'll share this PowerPoint out, but I can also put these in the chat. Step-by-step instructions on how to copy an entire course and step-by-step instructions on how to copy pieces of a course, because we're going to talk about both of those things. So real quick to go over the agenda, we're going to talk about the advantages of using, or the advantages of the tips that I'm covering in this training, although they're pretty self-evident. I'm going to talk about the import-export copy components tool, which is the tool that you use to copy your course materials. We're going to then get into the Manage Dates tool, which is a nice bulk editing feature in Brightspace, and you may not all be familiar with that. I'll talk a little bit about the Manage Files tool, which is also a tool that not many people are familiar with. And then we'll talk about the bulk tools that there are inside of Brightspace to do kind of bulk editing to make your process a lot quicker. Okay, so real quick, just some advantages of doing a course copy is that it allows you to easily reuse course material from semester to semester. So some instructors do like to rebuild each semester because they're doing new things or they might have new assignments. But a lot of the times we're reusing the same things just like you do every semester. You reuse the same content materials. It's also, this training will show you how to save time by editing dates all in one place to make that process a lot easier for you. And the idea is to work smart and not hard, because we are working very, very hard these days outside of Brightspace. Okay, so again, before I get into the live site, I do want to talk about this, the copy component tool, because if any of you guys have ever spent some time in there, you might have wondered what some of the other options are. So I'm going to talk through this slide, but we're going to come back to it when we get in the live site and walk through that process. But when you go to copy your course, and this all lives under the course administration tool, and I will walk us through that later, but there's a tool called Import, Export, Copy Components, and that is a tool that you use to do your copying. On this page, it looks similar to what you see on the slide here. You have 4 different options that come up. The one that you're going to be using 99.9% of the time is this top option, which is what's called copy components from another org unit. And all that means is copy a course. That's basically what that means. They use a lot of extra terms that are kind of confusing, but org unit in Brightspace means a course. That's the one we're going to spend all of our time on today. I'm just going to briefly talk about what the other ones are in that list, but we rarely use those. The next option is copy components from a parent template. We don't currently use this at CCC and Brightspace. That would be, so I'm just not going to talk about it. You're not going to use that in the near or distant future at this point, maybe one day. The export component is if I wanted to take my entire course, let's give you an example. If you teach for another institution that also has Brightspace, you can export your entire course into a package that you can then take to that other system that you use and import it there. So export components you would use, it basically packages your whole course to take down. Some instructors have used that to share with other instructors, but it's a large package, so you can't email it to someone else if you want to give someone else access to your course or let them copy the course. Your best course of action for that, if you wanted to share courses with another instructor, is to send a help desk ticket with both of you guys giving permission, and we can give one person access to the other person's course to do that copying, or an administrator can copy it for you. But a lot of instructors might also use that tool if at the end of the semester they want to pull down their course just for safekeeping or to hold on to or for future use. Now, mind you, you can't open anything with that export. Once you download it from Brightspace, if you tried to open it, none of it would make sense. It's going to be in a zipped file with things that only Brightspace can read or another learning management system can read. So the idea of export is just that it pulls down a package of your whole course, but you're not using that very often. The import components tool you might use for various things. The import process is if, so let's say in that same scenario, someone shared a course package with you that you can then import into your course. That's the tool that you would use for that. An example of this is when we moved from Blackboard to Brightspace. This is essentially what we did. We exported each individual course out of Blackboard, and we imported using that tool, but a more bulk version of that, to import the course from Blackboard and convert it into something that Brightspace can interpret and read. The other time you might use the import components is if you use a test generator. The one I'm most familiar with is Pearson's Test Gen. They can create quizzes and test banks that you can import into Brightspace, and you would use that import components tool to do that. So that's what all of these tools mean on the import, export, copy components page. But again, the one that we're going to spend the most time on is this copy components from another org unit, which means copy components from a course or copy everything from a course. Any questions about that? We're going to go live, but this is just to walk through what we're going to cover. But are there any questions that I didn't cover on that? And let me check the chat too. I think I see just names. Okay. In the process of copying components, it's a 3-step process. When we're talking about copying an entire course over, it's really 3 steps. You're choosing that first option, copy components from another org unit. You're searching for the offering. So it's that nice big gray button in the middle. The offering means what course do I want to copy into this course? So we'll talk about this when we get in the live site too, but you always start in the blank course and you search for the offering or the course that you want to bring into the blank course. The second step is you search for that course that you want to copy from or copy into, this one. And then lastly, you click this nice blue button at the bottom that says copy all components. So it's a 3-step process, and we'll go through that live in a moment. The select components option here that you see grayed out is if you are trying to only copy pieces of your course. So at the beginning of the semester, technically you want to take the entire course from fall and move it into spring. Sometimes you might have built a quiz in one of your classes and you just want to bring that quiz over. In those cases, you would use the select components option, but there are some dependencies that you need to know about that we'll talk about once we get to that point. The Manage Dates tool that we're going to spend some time talking about is a tool to bulk edit dates in your course. So you may have experienced, if you've used the course copy tool in the past, that after you brought everything in, all of the dates are still in the past, and you have to go searching and finding the dates that you may have set and have to update them. This Manage Dates tool lets you A, update them all from one place, or at least B, see where all, like visually quickly see if you have any really old dates that might be affecting students' access to things. So we'll spend some time in there. And then the Manage Files tool, which this looks pretty gross, but the Manage Files tool is a view that you probably have never looked at before, but anytime you upload a file into Brightspace, it gets stored in the Manage Files tool. And so you can organize things in here if you like it, if you're someone who really enjoys folder file structure. You can organize in here, but something to keep in mind is if you've built a lot of things in Brightspace and then you delete things from Brightspace, but you choose that option that we always tell you to choose, which is remove from content, but don't permanently delete from content. All of those files still get stored in this Manage File. So sometimes it's nice to come in here and clean that up. So we'll take a look at that too. And then finally, we'll talk about quick editing. And this will be the end of our session when we'll go through each of the different tools and bulk editing ways that you can kind of clean up quickly. So I'm going to switch over to the live site, and we're going to start with doing a course copy. So again, to reiterate, when you go to do a course copy, you're going to start in your blank course. It's really important. So I have a blank course here that I've called my fall 20, it should be called Spring 2021 blank training course. There's nothing in it. And what I'm going to use this course as my example to do a copy of one of my older courses. Under Course Admin is where that tool under the Site Resources section called Import, Export, Copy Components lives. When you click on that, that's where we're going to see all of those options that I was just talking through. And we always want to use the first option at the top, which is picking my course to copy, essentially. So it's this first option, copy components from another org unit, and we're going to search for offering. In that pop-up is where I'm going to search for the course that I want to copy from, or the course I want to bring into this one. It does not copy enrollment or student work. All it's doing is copying all of the material that you have. It's basically making a duplicate of everything that you've built in that class for this class. So it's going to copy grades and content and announcements and quizzes and discussions and activities, but none of the student work and none of the student enrollments. All of that stays behind. We're just copying the material. So I'm going to search for the class that I want to copy. And typically for you guys, you would search, you could simply do a fall 2020 and it would pull up whatever you wanted, or you can search spring 2020. Or you can just click this search bar and it'll pull up every course that you have access to that you can copy from. So in my case, I'm an administrator, so it's going to give me way more courses than you will see. So I'm going to search specifically for a name, but it is much harder if you know which class. If you're like English 101, section C, you can certainly enter all that in. but sometimes it's just easiest to put the term in, and then you'll see a list of all the classes from that term. Once you find the class that you want to copy from, so it's typically listed, the name of the course will help you identify it. You click the little box to select it, and you choose Add Selected. So what that does is refreshes this page, and it says Course to Copy, and it lists the course that I'm about to copy from. Now, you can see this box is checked that says Include Protected Resources. I recommend never, ever, ever unchecking that box. You want to keep that box checked. You don't want to change any of the defaults. Keep it the way it is. If you don't do that, it might not bring over specific images or links that you have in your course. Did someone have a question? Oh, I thought I heard something. Okay. Once you do that, this next process, if I'm copying the entire course, I simply click that big blue button that says Copy All Components. I'm going to warn you, there's no confirmation. So you press this button, it is copying that entire course. Okay, so be really sure that you want to copy that course before you hit Copy All Components. There's no undo, and there's no, hey, are you sure this is the course that you want to copy? The only warning you might get is if you've copied from this course before, which I probably will get in a second when I choose this. It might pop up a thing saying you've copied from this course before. Are you sure you want to do this? And that's just a fail-safe in case you forgot that you've already done a copy. The reason why I say this is immediate and be really sure that that's what you want to do is you use the same tool if you're just trying to copy one or two things out of that course instead of the entire course. If you wanted to just copy, 5 announcements that you've created in another course, you would follow these same steps up here, but instead of clicking Copy All Components, you would choose the gray button that says Select Components. And what's nice about that option is there's more things to do. So it's not a click and it's done. So I'm just telling you this morning because there's no undo if you copy an entire course into your course. Okay, so I'm going to click Copy All Components to just go through the process of doing a complete copy. Now, this warning that I got is, like I said, I've already copied from this course before and then I deleted it out because I've done training. So it's just telling me you've already done this copy. Are you sure you want to? And I'm going to say yes, because I know I intentionally am recopying from the same course. This list that you see under here are all of the different types of courses or different times I've copied into this course. So typically the first time you do it, you're only going to see the one thing that you're working on, which is this top section here. And it tells you that the copying is in progress. Depending on how large your course is, it should take from anywhere a few seconds up to a few minutes. Sometimes the courses that that are really large, you have quizzes, you have lots of content, you have lots of videos, you have lots of stuff, those might take a little bit longer to copy. As you can see, in this case, mine's taking a little bit longer to copy. And we can't really move on until it's done. So I'll pause here for questions while it's copying.
I have a question. I have a class that came with a syllabus that gave me 3 options of different course components in the fall. And I spoke to Mr. Powers and he said I would have that course re-uploaded again into the same section. And it's not. Is there any way to find my original course?
What do you mean your original course?
So when the way the syllabus was set up is that you would click a pathway within the syllabus, and then that would eliminate the options that you weren't doing in the Brightspace module. So I'd like to have access to those other options again.
I would recommend, I would refer you back to Rich, because I don't know the specifics of how you guys are setting things up. Are there any other questions?
Yes, Elissa, I was wondering, since now we are all teaching online, when we make the copy, does it copy also the Zoom link or just the module?
That's great. It's going to copy the module and it's going to copy the tool, the Zoom tool, but you still have to reschedule on your Zoom link. You have to schedule the meeting.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
That's a really good question. Any other questions? Because it's still copying.
Another question. Is there a way I can make a blank Brightspace module for me to put things in that I will be needing in my other 3 classes?
So you should have a sandbox, and your sandbox is your blank, is just a place, a sandbox, a place for you to play and learn and store things for yourself. If you don't have a sandbox, you can request one through the help desk or emailing one of the Brightspace administrators.
Awesome, thank you.
You're welcome.
Is there a way?
Oh yeah.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Hey, Debbie. Is there a way to, if I have quizzes in Word doc, can I upload them into my quiz bank, or do I have to just manually type them in?
No to both. Brightspace cannot convert a Word document into a Brightspace quiz. However, there's third-party tools that can convert it into something that Brightspace can read. So if you go on our knowledge base and you search, I think it's import quiz, something like that. I can find it at the end of this. We have instructions on the different, like third party, like another university created something that you can paste the Word document in a specific format, press a button, and it gives you something that Brightspace can read for that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. While it's still copying, I'm gonna switch to talk about the select components piece, because there's a lot of dependencies with that. And I wanna make sure that we cover that even before I go into the cleanup. And Jason, thank you for that comment that quizzes have to be in a CSV file to import. Yes, you can. There's also a format that you can use in quizzes. That there's a template from Brightspace you can download, but it's not an easy format. So if you use one of those third-party tools, it can convert it into that CSV file that Brightspace can read. It's a great, thank you for that. Okay, so while this is running, I'm gonna go into a different course simply to show that import, export, copy components tool. And I'm gonna pull up another course, OH training, that I'm gonna use as my example of something I wanna copy an individual item. Okay, so I'm choosing in this course in particular, I want to just copy, let's say a quiz that I've made and I spent so much time building. Thank you. There's resources in the chat that are coming through too for that quiz generator. That's my favorite one as well. I think they have very clear instructions. So in this example that I'm going to show here is copying a course, copying pieces of course. So in this example, let's say I built a quiz in another course and I want to copy it over into this course because I don't want to spend the time rebuilding that, but I don't want to copy that entire course because it's halfway through the semester. And that they'll just duplicate everything. So in that case, there's an option to copy parts of a course from one course to another. The start of the process is the same. You choose copy components from another org unit and you choose the course you want to copy. But the second part is different in that you select the individual components that you want to copy. Again, it's telling me that I've already done a copy from this course, but that's okay. This next page is what's really important. So the good news is you can see through here that you can choose very individual items anywhere in your course. I can find that to copy over. So if I have a checklist, I can copy that. If I have a module of content, I can copy that. If I have discussions or assignments or grades or just my grade settings, let's say I set up my grade book, I went through the setup wizard for my grade book and I wanted a specific way, I can copy over those grade settings. One thing I will note really strongly here is there are a lot of hidden dependencies. And what I mean by that is you have to really understand how all of these tools work together in Brightspace in order to copy accurately. For example, if I'm trying to copy a quiz that in my course, it lives in content under a content module called week 3, and that's where I put my quiz. If I were to come through here and choose content, because logically I think, okay, it's in content, and I'm going to choose select individual items to copy because I just want that one quiz, so I want to choose the individual thing I want, and then I click continue, that isn't going to work because quizzes don't actually live in content, even though that's where it's posted. Quizzes are part of the quizzes tool. And so if I were to just copy content and find that quiz where I posted it in content and then move forward, I will get to my new course and have a broken link there because it didn't actually copy the quiz. So quizzes, explicitly, quizzes, assignments, or discussions will all work the same way. I recommend not worrying about content at all, even if it is posted in content and that's eventually where you want it to end up. If you're trying to copy one of those tools, you have to go to the tool itself. So in here, I have 4 quizzes. I'm going to choose quizzes, and I know I only want one of those. So I'm going to select individual items to copy. The other thing you need to know about the dependencies is if this quiz is connected to a grade item in that other class, and I don't also choose the grade item that it's connected to, I just choose the quiz and I click continue, it's not going to create the grade item itself. So I also have to come up here and choose grades and say select individual items to copy. So there's no way for you to really know all of the dependencies. I just say this as a warning because the select components option for copying individual things can be kind of, what's the word? You know, you can tell I'm expert. It's a little wonky, but it does work really well if you know what you're doing. So in this case, I know that I'm pulling a quiz in and I also want it to be connected to the gradebook, and then eventually I will post it in content. In that case, I'm going to choose the grades tool, I'm going to choose the quizzes tool and the individual items, and then I'll hit continue. This next page lets me choose, okay, here's all my grades. What's that one grade item you want to copy over? So I'm going to say, because it's a quiz, I'm going to say it's test 1 that that's my grade item that's connected to that quiz, or the quiz that I want to bring over. I'll click continue, and then it says, okay, what's the quiz that you want to copy over? And I click my test category, and I have a midterm exam. That doesn't really look like that's going to be my test 1. But maybe it is. Let's pretend that's connected to my test 1 grade item. So then I click continue. And now it gives me a confirmation page. You notice that if I copy the entire course, I get no confirmation. I can't change dates. I can't anything. It's just a full blanket copy. On this page, I can offset some dates if I want, but I typically change my dates manually, so I'm not going to go through this process, and we'll look at it again when we get to the Manage Dates tool. So I'm going to click Finish, and it's telling me that I'm copying 1 of 13 grade items, and I'm copying 1 of 4 quizzes. When I click Finish, it's going to go through this process just like it did when I was copying all components, but this is telling me that I'm copying selected components. Any questions about the select components tool?
I have a question about the quizzes.
Yes.
If you create question banks, like a question library,
Yes.
Is that automatically imported when you do a quiz?
It'll bring the questions over, but it won't bring the library over unless you choose.
So you have to make sure you import the quiz bank or question library as well?
Question library as well, yes. The quiz, wait. Oh, they must have changed this. It does bring, shoot. I'll have to follow up with you. There used to be, this class I'm in doesn't have a question library. There will be an option under, actually it's going to be before quizzes, it's called question library, and you would choose that as well.
And then if you have it to pick random questions, it'll still pick random questions, just not the same ones.
That's right, as long as you pull them at the same time. It's
Okay.
those dependent, as long as you do the copy, everything at once. It's one of those strange dependencies that Brightspace has hidden dependencies. So you have to know that everything has to be done at the same time.
If you've copied everything from that course, though, that should automatically have been there, right?
Yes.
When you start this process. Okay, thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. Any other questions about the select components? Okay. Okay, I'm going to go back to this course that I originally was copying the entire course. So it's done copying, thank goodness. So now when I get to this page that tells me that it's all done, at the end, you see all of these 3 buttons at the bottom. You don't really have to pay attention to them, but I'm showing you them because you will actually see these right underneath your copy, and you'll think, okay, what do I have to do? I have to click on one of those things. So I typically recommend people to go to view content just because it orients them to a place that they know. But you can also click back on content here or course home or whatever you want. But I'm going to click on content just so you can see that this course is no longer blank. Oh, and this course that I copied from happened to have an overview. I'm going to go back to my course home so I don't mess it up. So now my course is not blank. It's brought over all of those announcements. It's brought over the all the content that I have. Everything is here. It just picked up that course and brought it into here. So now we're going to talk about some of this cleanup. The very first thing I recommend doing, I like going tool by tool. I'm going to talk about managed dates in a second, but I do want to just make a quick kind of PSA about announcements. So when you do a course copy, of course, it brings over your announcements, and something that a lot of instructors are doing, or a lot of instructors do, is you post announcements throughout the semester to kind of provide information, and sometimes they're not going to be relevant for the next class. You want to delete them. I'm just warning you, this X here does not delete the announcement. It hides it from yourself. It's a dismiss. And so just because you hit this little X, even though in every other logical place that we use technology, an X means delete, it does not mean delete here. So in order to delete announcements that you don't plan on using, you have to go to the announcement tool itself. So from the announcement tool, then I can select everything. Let's say I want to just delete everything. I can check the box at the top and click delete. It'll wipe out all of my announcements. Or if there's just a few I want to delete, let's say I'm not going to use that test one. These are old Zoom links, whatever it is, I can select the ones I want to delete and then hit the delete key. So it's really important to know that the X next to the announcements on the course home does not delete announcements. Students still see those. And that happens a lot if a teacher posted like a Zoom link and they're like, oh, I'm not using that Zoom link. I'm just going to exit out and I'm going to post this other Zoom link. And then some students are in one Zoom meeting and other students are in another Zoom meeting, and you can't figure out why they're seeing an announcement that you can't see. It's because you didn't delete it. That little X just dismisses it from you, so you don't see it anymore, but students still see it. So that's super important when it comes to announcements. I'm gonna skip over going through all of the tools. I'm gonna save that for when we're bulk editing. But now I'm gonna go to manage dates. Oh yeah, Gina, did you have a question?
Yes, can you just hide them so the student doesn't see them, because chances are you are going to use it again?
Yeah, it's actually what I'm going to talk about at the manage dates. Thank you. So if I go to course admin, this is a tool you may not be familiar with, but there's something here called manage dates. Depending on how you look at this view, you can change it to alphabetical if it's easier for you to find things. If you click by name, that puts this in alphabetical order, so then you can find manage dates here. Or if it's by the default category, it's in this site resources section called manage dates. Manage dates lets you see all of the dates that you have in your class assigned to every little thing. So if I were to scroll down without filtering by anything, you can see I've got grade items, discussion topics, content topics, grade item, and if there's any date that's associated with them. So in the Manage Dates tool, I can edit or delete or shift dates in my class all at once or individually, but from one place. So an example of this is what Gina brought up is, let's say I'm going to use those same announcements, but I don't want to use them yet, or I want time to go through them. The way announcements work in Brightspace is that you can't hide them like every other tool. There's not an option to like not make visible. They might add that someday, but right now there's not an option to say make visible or invisible or hide from users. But what you can do is with announcements, because it operates differently than every other tool, is you can set a date in the past, which makes it disappear from students. So one of the recommendations I have when you come in here is I'm going to filter by tool, specific tools, and I'm going to choose the announcement tool. And when I click apply filter, it's going to show me just my announcements and all of the dates. So what I want to do, like you see how I have a welcome for each week, but I don't want them to see all of this on week 1. I want them to see them later. I can blanket set all of their dates in the past so that I can make them available when I'm ready to. So in this case, I can select the box at the top that checks them all off. And I can set, I'm going to use this first option as my example, my bulk edit dates. And what I'm going to do here is I'm not going to worry about the due date because announcements don't have due dates, but I'm going to worry about the start and end dates. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to set my end date to, let's say, December 20th, 2020. That way I know it's in the past and students can't see this anymore. What that did, it changes all of the end dates. So that way I don't have to worry about students seeing something they shouldn't be seeing. I could have, not checked one of my announcements, like my week 1 announcement, left that unchecked. One of the things I want to highlight here is because I'm using the words that if you do this, students can't see these things anymore. Announcements are the only tool that after an end date, they can't see anymore. With assignments, quizzes, and discussions, after an end date, they can still see the thing, they just can't access it. So keep that in mind. If you don't want them seeing something at all, it's only announcements where an end date hides it from them. The other tools, you have to actually explicitly say hide from users. Was there a question? I thought I heard something.
Can we still see the announcements on our page if we've done that?
Yes. So having set these end dates in the past, if I go to course home, I'm not going to see anything because they're past. But if I click on that announcements tool, I'm going to see all of my announcements again. And this is where I would come and edit them when I'm ready. So let's say week 1, I'm ready to make available, or let's say it's week 8, wait, since it's here, I'm ready to make available. I can edit it now when I'm ready and change or just remove my end date or change my end date, and my start and end date to something that's current. Any other questions about the announcements and manage dates? Okay. Now, this is also a nice way to look at each tool. So again, when I'm talking about some teachers, depending on how often you're using the dates tool, you might have content that you don't realize ended for students, months ago, and they can't access it anymore because there's all these hidden hidden dependencies in Brightspace is one of those big things. So I might choose content next and apply filter and see if I accidentally have any old dates set on content, but it doesn't look like, oh, here's some. I've got, let's say this is, I don't know if this is an end date or not, but let's say this is an end date on this and I don't want it to end. I want students to be able to see it. Here I can click that X. In this case, that X does mean delete. I can click that X and it'll remove that start or end date or whatever date that was. I can also add dates from here to anything. So let's say I am going through, let's use announcements as the example again. I can come in here and I can either click on that date and I can change the start date individually for each item. Or if there's no date, announcements is a bad example of that. If there's no date, so here's an extra credit assignment, I don't have an end date, or I don't have a due date for this observing early childcare. These little dashes, if I hover over them, I can click right on them and I can set those dates from here. So I can manage all of my dates from one place. The one thing you can't do from here is change the visibility, even though it's showing you whether or not something is visible here. I can't click on that and say invisible or hide from users. This visibility is just to tell you whether or not it is visible to students, but I can't manage that or edit that from here. It's really just a dates editing tool. Okay, there is a way to bulk offset dates. And what I mean by that is, and this may not work for here, although these are 2018, so it might work if I choose far, far away in the future. This bulk offset dates, if you click on this, you can see that you have, I can offset by direction and range, or I can calculate a range between two dates. What this means is, if these were the offset by direction and range, I know these are in 2018, so I'm going to have to do some big math, but I'm going to pretend to only do, let's say this was my spring 2020 class, and I want to move them forward to spring 2021. So it's basically an entire year. I'm going to move these forward by 365 days. So what you should see when I'm done is that this 7/14/2018 is going to turn to 7/14/2019, because I'm just moving it 365 days, 1 year. So here you can see it changed, it shifted all of my dates 1 year. So then if you are copying from a spring class to a spring class and not a fall class to a spring class, you can do the 365. But know that you might have to adjust that for holidays and the weekdays are different and all of that kind of stuff. But it is a nice way to just move it forward, and then you can adjust the dates individually then when it's set there. So that's manage dates. Any questions on that tool? Okay. Next, I'm going to spend, oh yeah, go ahead.
What is the difference between offset direction and range and calculate range by two dates?
The calculate range, I think it's between, was it between two dates? Hold on.
For instance, if I know the course that I'm copying, I know the day that it started, and I know the date this course starts, would I just enter in those two dates and it would do the math for me?
Yes, it should. Let's test that really fast. So I'm going to say,
or can it be any date that I know one thing was due on and a date something else was due on?
I don't know. I think what this is doing is it's basically going to adjust. Calculate range of dates.
So for instance, if I had an assignment that was due on a Tuesday in the one class.
It's not that smart.
And it was due, it's a Tuesday this semester, but different times, and I made that right for the due date, would it just calculate that difference and plug it in?
I don't know, but I don't think it's that smart, but I have not spent enough time with it to accurately answer your question. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
It's not something I use that often. Okay, quickly, I'm going to just show you manage files, because I do want to talk about the other bulk editing tools. Manage files, again, is the place where everything you add to Brightspace gets stored in managed files. So if you upload a Word document, if you upload your syllabus, if you upload images into a test, if you upload any of your files or videos that you upload, they all get stored in this place called manage files. What's nice about this place now, this is a kind of a messy course that I have here because it's been copied many, many, many times through all of these trainings and stuff. But if I scroll down, you can see these are files that I at some point had in this class. And when you see this little icon here, that tells you that it's being used in the class and where it's being used. This is helpful because if you're like, oh, I need to clean this up because it's taking so long to copy and whatever, anything that doesn't have a link, you can potentially delete because you're not using it anymore. It might be something like long ago you had removed it from your content. You can also organize this if you like to keep organized. Students will never see this. This is your kind of back end view, but it is a way to keep organized if you like to keep it as a storage as well. It's course specific, so it's not, I can't go into manage files with another course and look at this course's files or pull in this course's files. However, there is a fancy thing where you can, if I wanted to copy a couple of files, this option here that copies it, this paste option will show up in any course. So I can copy some files from here and go into another course and go into manage files and click paste, and it'll bring those files, it'll copy those files over to here without you going through the entire course copy process. When we're just talking about files like syllabi or PDFs or documents or things of that sort. But the manage files tool can be really powerful too. Before I move on to the next part,
Elissa,
are there any more?
so they have it only in alpha order, no? Can you have it in chronological order?
The manage files chronological order, no. It's a filing system that's alphabetical.
In alpha order.
You can create new folders and you can number them.
Okay, and then how about, let's assume I don't know what is CS files. Can you open, double click on it and open quickly and then go back to?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, great.
These are all leftover from Blackboard migration. So there's a lot of, so like these are images, and I can click on them and they'll download, and then I can look at what that image was that might have been used in a class. Yeah.
Awesome. Great.
Yeah.
Thank
But
you.
again, students don't see this at all. It's just kind of your back-end organization of files. Sometimes it's just eye-opening to see what is in there and what you might have saved. Yours won't typically look like this. If you've built from scratch, yours won't typically look like this.
Great.
Okay, let me quickly shift.
While you're doing that, I have a quick question.
Yes.
So now going forward with this, knowing about this file management, when it asks, do you want to delete this from the course or just from the view? So we can choose not to have it saved anymore in this file tree, right? Like if we want to get rid of a file, because I just noticed I have like syllabi from like 3 semesters ago.
Yeah, you can delete them from there too. Yeah, if you know what you're doing, you can, and like, you know, intentionally what you're trying to do, you can use the permanently delete option, and that would remove it from course files.
Thank you.
This is where it ends up when you do that, the remove but not permanently delete. Okay, so I'm going to quickly go through the other tools in terms of bulk cleanup. So under content, you may have seen this option to bulk edit. What that does is it basically opens up everything into edit mode, so you can edit the title or dates and things like that. So I like to go through each module and I'll click bulk edit, and here I can edit the dates, I can edit the titles, I can add dates, I can add descriptions, I can edit the descriptions, change that date that I hard coded into there, or wrote right into there. I can edit these dates as I need. And then I can update each of those, and it lets me edit everything on the page at once so that I don't have to edit each individual item. That's the bulk edit tool that's helpful. I can also delete things, hide them, make not visible, all of these kinds of options that are basically the properties. So if I weren't clicking on bulk edit, but if you've ever clicked on that drop down and you clicked on edit properties in place, that's what you're essentially able to edit. So the name of that, condition, release conditions, meaning like date restrictions or things like that, and the description. Then I like to go to each tool individually, like I talked about. So I'll go to the assignment tool, and I might clean up if there's an assignment that I'm not going to be using, or an old assignment. You can quickly delete these simply by selecting the ones that you want to delete, more actions, and delete. Or you can also bulk edit in these tools, and it lets you edit all the dates from here as well. It lets you edit the titles of those assignments as well, but it doesn't let you get into the details. It's just kind of global editing. I'm going to quickly turn on the waiting room because there's another training coming up. Okay. The discussions tool, very similarly, it's not going to bring over your student, like if you do a copy, it's not going to bring over your student responses to things. But there is an option to bulk delete if there's discussions you're not using anymore. So that's under more actions and delete. And it takes you to a page where you can see all of your forums and your topics if there's things that you want to get rid of. So there's lots of places to go to kind of like bulk edit. You can't bulk edit discussions, but you can bulk delete discussions that you're not using. And then similarly with quizzes, there's a similar bulk edit option. I can also, if I wanted to delete everything, I can select them all, and under more actions, I can delete, or I can hide from users. If I'm not ready to set the dates, but I don't want them being able to see these yet, I can bulk hide it from all users. And then the bulk edit tool, similarly to the assignment, lets you edit the names and the categories of those quizzes and the number of attempts and whether or not it's hidden, but it does not let you edit the dates. So each tool works a little bit different in terms of what the bulk edit options are. But that's the quizzing tool, how you go through and do that kind of cleanup quickly. And then the grades tool under manage grades is where you do a lot of your editing and cleanup. So in here, if there's activities that you're not going to be using, so that you've already deleted the activity themselves, when you get to the grades tool, you might see some items that are no longer connected to the gradebook. So like, let's say I deleted that activity, I can now come in here and clean up my gradebook. The way you delete columns from the gradebook is A, they can't be associated with anything, so they can't have anything in this column here. If they do, you have to go delete the activity first. And then from the manage grade screen, you do more actions and delete first, and then you choose what you want to delete. It'll only let you delete the things that aren't associated with anything. So there's that 14-word choice. I can delete that because it wasn't connected to anything. These other question marks tells you that it's connected to something, and it'll tell you what it's connected to, and that's why you can't delete it. Okay. All right, we have 5 minutes. That is the entire process of the course copy cleanup and management. I'm going to pause for questions, and then the next training that we'll have after this is groups and release conditions. If you plan on staying for that, stick around. I'm going to stop this recording, and then we'll start that one up when we get started. And thank you very much. If you don't have any questions, I appreciate you attending.
And where would we